Alright, hello and welcome back to our playthrough of Escape Velocity Nova. We are doing the Rebel campaign, the Success storyline, which means we successfully opened relations with the Polaris way back, at this point I think 3 episodes ago. But as I mentioned then, as I will mention now, that does influence the rest of the entire campaign, so here we go. Now, it's entirely possible we actually finish things up this episode, depending on how fast we're able to go through the remaining missions. And then afterwards, of course, we'll do the failure campaign, which we'll need to think of some better branding besides the failure campaign. It's too much like real life. I digress. So we're going to drop Eamon Flanagan off in New Ireland in the Tauthus system. And then we get to start watching the events unfold that we just spent last episode setting up. See if the Bureau falls into our oh so cleverly laid trap. So you know, Mr. Rage Gunboat, I have Wraitheye as well. I also have chain guns. Although they actually have fusion pulse cannons or batteries. I actually don't know which they have on a default Rage Gunboat. Regardless. It's been good fighting alongside you, Ory'Hara, says Eamon as he leaves. For in your chosen field of war, you are a true master. The ancient Gaels called people like you warrior poets, for they understood that to master the art of war required a man to master his soul. I would be honored to call you my battle brother. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Having traveled extensively through Auroran space and learned a little about its warrior culture, you realize that this offer is not given or received lightly. By offering to become your battle brother, he has indicated that he holds your life to be of much greater value than his own. You are touched and bow deeply, replying that the honor would be entirely yours. The two of you grip forearms, and you both make a small incision on the back of your hands, letting your blood mingle. Good luck, my brother, Eamon says by way of farewell. If any songs are sung about these days, I'll make sure that your name is mentioned before that of all others. Alright, a little bit strange that we do that in addition to being a knighted knight of the Red Branch, but sure, why not? Can't hurt, you know. Take any accolade I can get. And now we return up to Rebel 2 to inform Geoff/Flanagan what the plan is and confront him about his duplicity. Although I suppose when dealing with the head of Rebel Intelligence, duplicity should have just been expected. Regardless. Ooh, Marauder. That certainly was one. It certainly isn't now. Alright. You're greeted by your supervisor, Geoff, as you walk down the ramp. I'm guessing that Eamon let slip who I am, he says without preamble. You reply that Mr. Flanagan is of the opinion you are Frandle. Well, he's right, chuckles Frandle, and it's good to see you are still keeping your cards close to your chest, even with me. Especially with you, you reply with a sardonic smile. Frandle laughs. So you got everything in place? He asks, and you nod in confirmation. Excellent. Meet me in the bar in 2 hours. We have another mission that I believe can be only completed by you. So this is, I believe, and I could be wrong, the first time we have explicitly spoken anything other than passive voice in this entire campaign. Unlike the Auroran campaign where we do it all the time. Frandle enters the bar with General Smart, and they both make their way over to your table. We have just received news that Razik's Roughnecks left Space Dock 5 yesterday morning, says General Smart quietly. Things are now officially out of our control. We can try to channel them a little from here. General Smart is going to lead the entire Rebel fleet in an attack on various Federation military targets in the hope that it will draw away ships from the Auroran campaign, giving the Heron House a better chance of surviving, explains Frandle in an equally hushed tone. Unfortunately, our entire military doesn't amount to much against the might of the Federation Navy, and if they are allowed to react efficiently, we will be crushed, he continues grimly. Needless to say, this is not the desired outcome. We need someone, General Smart says gravely, to decapitate the Bureau in order to cause a little chaos and confusion. Are you interested? Definitely. Excellent, exclaims General Smart. We believe that without leadership, the Bureau will take as much as a week to start reorganizing, and the Federation Navy will be effectively broken up into a large number of smaller units they will be able to deal with. The head of the Bureau currently goes by the name of Crane, Randall informs you, and she is usually seen in the uniform of a Federation Navy commander. She is mid-30s, 5'5", slim, with blonde hair and blue eyes. General Smart turns to stare at Frandle. I wasn't aware that we knew that much about the leader of the Bureau. She was my best pupil, reminisces Frandl, but she always did prefer to club things to death when a more surgical solution would suffice. Finesse was never her strong point. Anyway, he continues, snapping out of his reverie. She has been seen recently in the Wolf 359 system traveling in a ship called the Prodigal Son. Go there, disable her ship, capture her, and return here. So this confirms my assertion earlier that her first name is Melissa, because we did overhear Frandl talking to General Smart when we were being treated on the Rebel Ones in the Rebel One system for having that device removed from our skull, and he used almost this exact same terminology when referring to her. So there we go. And now we get to have our revenge on Commander Crane. The trick is, and this is the trick, not destroying her ship. It's not particularly well armored. It is accompanied by rage gunboats, or at least it usually is when you have to go and capture her. But there are still things that can go wrong, and she does have a tendency to run away. So we have to be clever here. By clever, I mean probably just rush in and blow it up. Then have to reload. As is tradition. As is tradition. So there are the rage gunboats. True to form. There's the Prodigal Son. Let's go down to 1x speed to do this. Yep. Every time, without fail. That's always what happens. Talk about using a club when a scalpel would suffice. Alright. Second verse, same as the first. We're just going to wait for her to get to the system center before spooking her. Now! I really didn't have to yell that, but there we go. The rage gunboats are not actually defending her. Yeah, some escort. I don't think they're behaving quite as intended. Regardless, Commander Crane has been captured on only the second attempt, which is honestly a pretty good outcome. There are other campaigns where you merely have to destroy her ship, and I prefer those greatly because it's far easier. Right. Once again, make our escape into the hypergate system. Boom. It's all gravy. You do know, Mr. Ory'Hara, the stunningly attractive Commander Crane informs you, that you're going to be killed when my people find you. If you return me now, I will reward you by making one of my lieutenants, where you will have an enormous amount of power and influence. What do you say? You snort quietly to yourself at her attempts to buy you off. You ignore her continuing attempts as you pilot your ship into the docking bay. After completing your post-flight routine, you pick her up and march her out to the waiting reception. You're greeted by all the rebel leaders except Frandl, who is nowhere to be seen. Beautiful Crane looks at them imperiously and asks them what it feels like to be fighting on the losing side, especially now that the Bureau knows of the location of this base. General Smart laughs. You may find that all your information regarding the station is completely correct. Take her away. As she is led away, you feel a tap on your shoulder and you turn to see a man who is vaguely familiar, indicating you should follow him. He takes you to one of the many intel offices and turns to you. If you're wondering why you don't recognize me, he says with a familiar voice of Frandl, it's because I had to surgically alter my appearance. I don't want to be recognized in public by that young lady and revealed. You did very well on this last mission, he continues cheerfully, but unfortunately we need a couple of other weapons against her. You see, we want to put her on a Velos trial, but the Velos are still an enslaved race. He holds up a hand to forestall your questions. Yes, I know the propaganda says they now serve the Federation willingly, he explains cynically. I created it, but it isn't true. I have an idea, though, he continues thoughtfully. Keep an eye out here. Once I've hammered out all the details, I'll be waiting for you. There you are, exclaims Frandl after the two of you spot each other in this fairly crowded establishment. I was beginning to wonder when you were going to turn up. Apparently, right after we last spoke. While you're away, I've come up with a method to have a Velos trial where the Velos are actually capable of handing down the right decision, he explains. You see, because the Velos are enslaved and can be literally ordered to do anything, they are very useful to the Bureau in the field of justice, because the Velos who is allegedly meant to be reading the truth of statements of the accused can actually be ordered to answer in a specific way. The Bureau has used this trick for years to bias the courts. Now, since Crane's underlings are demanding her return, saying that if she has done anything wrong, she should stand trial, I want to figure out a way of ensuring the impartiality of the Velos judge so that she can indeed stand trial. At the end of the day, if she is found guilty, then the Bureau will be basically defeated. Are you interested in hearing my solution? Of course we are. It's simple, really, he explained slowly. The Velos are telepaths. It appears that there is a way for another telepath to take the strain, leaving the Velos free from the burden of their enslavement. Now, I just happen to know that Polaris have a number of telepaths amongst them. He continues with a savage glint in his eye. None are anywhere near as powerful as any Velos, but a small group of them should be able to do the job. That's where you come in. I've already contacted the Polaris in the matter, and they have agreed to help in the matter as they feel that they have an enormous debt to the Velos for protecting them from a colonial council invasion some 7 centuries ago. Once you've come back from Ory'Hara in the Mahari system with those Polaris telepaths, he says with a sudden cold resolution, we can take the young Crane to trial, and the Bureau will be no more. You realize that this cold, hard man before you is the real Frandl, whom you are seeing for the first time. Well, he did come up with a lot of the various propaganda measures and awful things, you know. Those were not solely Crane's doing. I think the implication is that Frandl made most of those, and she just took over. Alright, so we cannot avoid going and pronouncing Polaris names, unfortunately, so off to Ory'Hara. Hopefully in the most expedient manner possible. Although I suppose probably the best way to do that is to go up through Auroran space via the Tekkel system. But it doesn't matter. We have an escort, which I believe is that supposed to be Frandl? Hard to know. I don't know if I like the Polaris Dragon or the Rebellion Dragon better. I think the green is quite nice, but I am a fan of purple. They're both good, in different ways. Look, we can get a side-by-side here if we can get the Rebel one to come close. Hard to say. No matter. But as I said, I think we'll be wrapping up the success route in this video, as we are getting near the end. We can go on to the alternative route, instead of the failure route. But I think the Rebellion campaign is pretty interesting. It really is best when treated in parallel with the Federation campaign, so you can compare some of the stuff, and you can get a more full view of what exactly is going on. You were surprised to see a smiling Miranda when you open your hatch. Hello again, Ory'Hara, she says, happy to see you. You have become something of a legend amongst our people since last we met. You have really lived up to your code name, much as I thought you might. And before you ask, yes, I am a telepath. I'm sorry I didn't tell you last time, but I thought that it might be detrimental to our working relationship. You wave your hand and tell her that it does not matter. She smiles and goes on to introduce you to her fellow telepaths, who you notice are all garbed in gray, much like she is garbed in black. One of them notices you are looking and tells you the different castes wear different clothes. The Mahari, the caste to which Miranda belongs, wear all black. The rest of the group belong to the Nokomoria and are all warriors. Miranda explains the ruling council suggested that warrior telepaths might be more capable of dealing with difficult situations should they arise. Well, we've got a bunch of Nokomoria on our ship, which, great. And now we just get to scoot on back. Alright, yep, we're just going to go back to Cania, and from there we can just jump up to the Korea system. It has been fun doing the Rebellion campaign again. It's a little bit of a shame that in the success route you don't get access to as much technology as in the failure route, but that's what we're going to do both. It is nice seeing all the alternative dialogue you can get by being a Knight of the Red Branch, though. I had no idea that there was quite so much in this. Just one of those little joys. Now, what would have been nice is if we had unique dialogue about Commander Crane when we picked her up from Wolf 359, because naturally we A, worked for her and then were tortured by her, so you would expect that we would have something to say about it, but I don't think they put that in, sadly. Like I said, you can't have everything. Where would you put it? Did my escort get himself destroyed? That's just brilliant. Well, it doesn't matter. You are greeted by a smiling Frandle when you land. Miranda is surprised to find out that the man she knew as your supervisor is the mysterious Frandle. I didn't even realize that you'd assumed a false identity, she exclaims in confusion. How did you do that? I have no real identity, answers Frandle with a wry smile. I make any identity I take on my real one. It allows me to operate around the Velos without being discovered, which is useful. Even if they didn't point me out because they realized that I was a rebel, their reaction to my presence if they were aware that I was using a false identity could be enough to give me away. Now, ladies and gentlemen, he bows courteously, if you would please come this way to meet the other leaders of the rebellion, we can brief you on the exact details of the situation, and we can begin the operation. Ory'Hara, if you can meet me in the bar in 2 hours, he says without looking at you, I will explain the next phase to you. Okay. Geoff walks in and you hail him from your seat in the rear of the bar. He comes over with a grin, which he loses when you address him as Frandle. I survived by being unknown, he murmurs intently. I would appreciate it if you kept the information you have quiet. Loose lips sink ships. You nod, feeling a little hard done by, but you understand the idea. Despite this, you cannot help but feel that he is hiding something from you, something that's probably quite important. I need someone to take Crane to Seoul that she can stand trial, he announces quietly. It should be fairly easy, but I need that person to be someone I trust implicitly. Are you available? Yes. I know I can count on you, he continues gratefully. You are going to be escorting the ship Forgotten Honor to Earth. On board will be Dr. Pentecost. He wants to be there when Crane is humiliated. So does General Smart, but he is currently busy off in his crusades harassing the Federation forces, but he assures me he will meet you on Seoul. Don't mention to Crane that we have a card up our sleeves, he tells you more seriously. We don't want her to suspect anything. It would be something of a public relations disaster, he says with a wry grin, to lose Dr. Pentecost. So if you can make sure that the Forgotten Honor isn't destroyed en route, it would probably be for the best. Good luck, Ory'Hara. Sadly, there is, to my knowledge, no special thing that happens. If it does indeed get destroyed en route, I think it just failed the mission. And I expect that we're probably going to have to deal with a large buildup of rage gunboats as soon as we get into Seoul. Let's find out. Surprisingly, no. Oh, that's probably them. But they're too slow to catch up with us. You keep Commander Crane on board until the trial, despite the protestations of the Federation media. The trial itself is an enormous affair, being publicized live Federation-wide. Commander Crane stands for a traditionally long-haired Velos judge and a bailiff who will read out the list of crimes she is accused of. Bailiff begins reading out the charges, which range from breaching freedom of speech to imprisonment without trial, from unlawful execution, provoking war with other nations, and entering into coalitions with pirate organizations. The final 2 charges are of treason, and of usurping executive power away from the democratically elected representative government. After spending some minutes reading out the charges, the bailiff looks up from his datapad and asks Commander Crane formally, "How do you plead?" She answers with a resounding, "Not guilty." The Velos judge stands up and looks directly in her face. She lies. The crowd erupts. Crane looks momentarily confused. She is guilty of every crime she is accused of, says the Velos judge, somehow audible over the noise of the crowd. Are you surprised? Asks the Velos judge, lifting his traditional long hair to reveal an enslavement device attached to his skull. We are no longer your slaves. After 6 centuries, we are now a free people, and in my freedom I condemn you to the worst punishment the Federation Constitution allows for: lifetime incarceration in solitary confinement. This court is adjourned, and our debt is now paid. We can finally join our brethren beyond the veil. The Velos judge looks up at you and says one word with a nod, Ory'Hara, and slowly fades from sight. You can somehow sense that he has moved to a higher plane. As you lose track of him, you sense his joy. In the following hubbub, General Smart finds you and yells across the crowd that he wants to see you in the bar as soon as the both of you can get there. So there we go, we have had our revenge on Commander Crane. If we act now, says General Smart when the 2 of you finally get to the bar, we can end this war. We have the Bureau running for cover, going into damage control mode. I'm going to lead an attack on Bureau HQ on New England before returning here and sending my men out to hunt down the remnants of their forces. The news I'm getting from Auroran Space is that Heron House has accused the Moash House of trying to destroy their empire. And with Dektikar witnesses, it looks like the charges might stick, which would mean the Moash House would be stripped of their position, lands, and even their name. The way things are going, it looks like Heron is going to become First House, and they seem at least a reasonable bunch. All in all, things are looking up. I need someone to go and pick up the other rebel leaders, he tells you quietly. I want to make an announcement in the press calling for general elections within the Federation, and many of them will want to stand for office. Can you do it? Yeah, of course we can do a simple courier mission. Thank you, he says gratefully. I don't know how I would have survived without you. The remainder of the leaders are located on Rebel 1 in the LV system, he informs you. By the time you have left, I will have sent them a coded signal warning them to be ready to return with you to Earth to lend their weight to the announcement. It shouldn't be too hard unless the Bureau tries to interfere. While you're out there, keep an eye out for Bureau forces, he continues. If you see any, make sure you pass the information to the next rebel ship you see. I believe most of them have been named, unless they have recently changed their paint jobs. Interesting, I think it's missing a token here. I suspect it should be, I believe most of them have been named Prodigal Son or something, unless they're referring to the rebel ships. Good luck, Ory'Hara, General Smart says standing, and once again, thank you. Alright, so yes, we are in the end game now, and we should have plenty of time to finish this up before the end of the episode. So, under normal circumstances, if you had not done the little side mission where you have invasive surgery done on an explosive in your skull, this would be the first time you actually ever have to go to Rebel 1, which is kind of interesting. Like a little reveal that there's this second Rebel system that exists up in the Galactic North. And, looks like we won't have too much trouble with many Bureau forces either. Yeah, I think just pirates. We're good to go. Alright. Rebel 1. As soon as you open your hatch, the remaining rebel leaders start coming aboard. You notice that Frandl is missing, and you ask about his absence. He disappeared, replies Mr. Donald Chick with a shrug. We've learned from long experience that when he does this, he'll make contact in his own time. And there is nothing we can do to speed up that process. You roll your eyes and shake your head before giving your guests a quick tour of your ship, showing them their quarters for the trip. They are all seasoned travelers, and before long, you are back at the controls of your beloved Melissa's Bane, prepping her for the long return journey. It's not that long. Let's see if there's anything good we can get here. Matrix Steel wouldn't be bad, but I'd prefer to get a reactor. Maybe we can always get one on Earth. Alright. Probably best to go to Korea, then Tekel, then Seoul. And when we go and do the Federation campaign, once we've done the failure route for the rebels, I think it'll be interesting to juxtapose the two. Oops. Wasn't quite fast enough, but that's alright. We can just jump down here. Yep, see they're all tagged Prodigal Son. Those are the Bureau forces that we were warned about. Almost before you land, it seems like your ship is surrounded by the media in a frenzy after hearing the news that the remainder of the rebel leaders have returned to Federation space. One by one they step out, waving for the cameras before being whisked away by rebel soldiers who have drawn bodyguard duty. As soon as they are gone, things calm down, and you get to relax a little and start taking care of your somewhat battered ship. A few days later, as you're fiddling away on a power coupling that isn't working to its maximum efficiency, you hear the proclamation by the rebel leaders announcing the defeat of the Bureau and most of its forces. General Smart goes on to inform the citizens of the Federation about the recent machinations of the Bureau in attempting to provoke a war with the Aurorans. Finally, Dr. Pentecost asks the Federation president to step down and calls a general election. Within a day, the president bows to public pressure and steps down, but not before calling for Federation-wide general elections. To your surprise, you realize that the rebellion has won their war. They have destroyed the Bureau, and as a result, the Federation will return to what it once was before the Bureau twisted it into something unwholesome. You figure that you are out of a job, as you doubt they'll need too many people with your abilities in the new regime. You shrug your shoulders, thinking that you can handle becoming another freighter captain for a while. You decide that you will not mind leaving the excitement to other, younger pilots. Your thoughts interrupted when your comm beeps, indicating a pre-recorded message. It turns out to be Miranda, who asks to meet you in the bar. Okay, let's see what Miranda wants. You walk into the bar and see Miranda and the other telepaths sitting near the door. Ory'Hara, how are you? She asks with her dazzling smile. I'm so glad you got my message. Please join us. You begin to make casual conversation as the players loosen up around you. You discuss many things from the philosophies of the differing players' casts to the bits and pieces you know about Federation election protocols. You remember that you have heard nothing from Frandl, and you ask them, have they seen him? I don't really want to talk about him. Miranda wrinkles her nose in disgust. Have you heard that Commander Crane was found disemboweled in her cell? Nobody knows who did it or how it was done, but I have my suspicions. Do you know that he was the one who started the rebellion? Anyway, the reason I asked you here," she changes the subject quickly, "is because in all the excitement of the last few weeks, we seem to have been forgotten. We need a lift home. Could you help us?" Of course we can. The answer is in the affirmative, but you are not put off so easily. You ask what she meant by Frandl starting the rebellion. "He is no better than that Crane woman," Miranda answers, slightly cross at having to answer, which is not surprising since she learned her craft from him. He saw that when she was put in charge of the Bureau, they would be slowly pushed out of his job in Federation intel. So in an effort to regain his influence, he began to subtly make sure that several influential people began to get access to information detailing atrocities committed by the Bureau. The end result is that he has now destroyed his rival and once again became the head of Federation intel. You can be assured that we will be watching carefully while he remains in office." "Enough of talking about that man," Miranda exclaims more cheerfully. "You have proved yourself worthy of your name again, Ory'Hara, and would be honored if you would take us home. So this is the last mission. We just have to take the telepaths home and that'll be it." But the explanation about Frandl being the one who started the rebellion, and him being perhaps just as devious as Commander Crane, will be further explored. But it does kind of make it a little more interesting that you kind of go into this expecting it'll be sort of a Star Wars-esque trope about the noble rebellion fighting the dastardly Federation, when in reality it's both kind of exist to serve somewhat sinister purposes, although the Bureau is kind of a one-dimensional villain. They're pretty much just evil. Can we get assistance from this Manta? No, of course not. Those are the Polaris for you, and once again I forgot to get a reactor on our time on Earth. I guess I'll just have some water. But that was a pretty fun campaign, wrapped up in, what's this, like 6 videos? I guess it's a little bit shorter on account of the fact that you can do one of 2 paths. I wonder which of the writers did most of the writing for the Rebellion campaign, because it seems to have a different tone than, say, the Polaris campaign. I think whoever did the Rebellion one must have done the Rebellion and the Federation one, because they're very similar, at least in their writing style. But I think whoever did the Auroran one probably did the Polaris one, and I'm not sure where the Velos, and I think the Velos probably is done by the same Rebellion and, why did I land here? Rebellion and Federation person, but I suspect the Pirate one is kind of the odd one out. The Pirate one is always kind of the odd one out with all these storylines, but that's kind of why I like it. It's unique. Even if you have to run freight for Jay. Oh well, can't have it all. And so it ends. Dr. Aurelio Pentecost was elected the new president of the Federation, and his first proclamation was to free every single Velos from the bonds of slavery, whereupon they all left Federation space to journey to the galactic northwest to pay their respects to what they had been before passing beyond the physical universe. The Federation, under the guide of Dr. Pentecost, with the help of his fellow former rebel leaders, entered a new golden age. On his death some 23 years later, Dr. Pentecost signed the documents welcoming both the Aurorans and the Polaris into the Federation. After letting the pen slip from his fingers, he sighed and looked around at the men who had been his dearest friends and fellow conspirators during his life. He said one word, Ory'Hara, and died. Later, when pressed, the people who were present at the signing only smiled cryptically and left the question unanswered. Rumors abounded, but the only information found was that during the troubles that preceded the unification of humanity, there was a man who had gone by the name Ory'Hara, who had then immediately dropped out of sight. Not even the Polaris, who were rumored to have last seen him, knew where he might have gone. Over the next 10,000 years, humanity developed, and suffered the occasional nearly cataclysmic setback. Every time the name Ory'Hara was mentioned by those who had led humanity back from the brink, and none of them seemed to understand. Eventually, humanity began slowly evolving, and began to move beyond these limited dimensions, and finally they began to see. The last human, before evolving into the beyond, looked around at the physical universe laid out in all of its glory, and said one last word in a satisfied voice. Ory'Hara. So there we go. A mysterious force transports you to an unknown location, where we are surrounded by the ATMOS and Ambrosia people. And so this is why you don't want to annoy them earlier in the game, because they will just blow you up here. Alright, so our spiel. After more than 40 months, some 1,000 odd pages of notes and background information, 12 short stories, some 1,000 odd images, about 75,000 man hours, more than 10,000 email messages that take up more than 24 megabytes of hard drive space, more than 10 gigabytes of development files, over 30 meetings, and more than one strained friendship, some of which have remained a little cool, here is Nova. We hope you enjoy it. Oh, and congratulations on completing one of the major storylines. That's 1 of 6. Try again and see what you can find. Good luck, and thanks for playing Nova. So, the delightful developer commentary. Welcome to the New Sydney Hotel, the best little pub in town. You walk into a happy atmosphere where everyone seems to be enjoying themselves immensely. You notice a group of 6 people toasting each other over a few beers and 1 Coke on one of the high tables near the window. You wonder what they are celebrating. I would celebrate too if I made a game like this. And here is the Kestrel, a much beloved reference to the earlier games. It appears in every Escape Velocity game. And they used the same graphic as Contic for their Arspiel planet. But there we go. That's it. So that was the Rebellion storyline, the success route. Up next, we're going to do the route you get if you fail to deliver Miranda back secretly to the Polaris, and instead have to deal with the fallout from that. But regardless, I hope that you enjoyed it. I certainly enjoyed playing it. And until next time, I hope that you have a good one.